We have what the world wants. Take on the energy side. We are an energy superpower.
We are here to unlock an opportunity to export LNG to Europe. We're here to deliver a critical mineral for our defense interests.
In New York, Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke about Canada's place in a world where the old order is crumbling. At the very same time, Premier Susan Holt of New Brunswick was making the case for her province's projects in Ottawa. 2 stages, 1 national story. Both leaders pointed to the same truth. Donald Trump's tariff policies, meant to corner Canada, are instead accelerating an energy and infrastructure push that could reshape the map. What was designed as pressure is turning into momentum. Canada is moving faster to link its resources to Europe, and in doing so, it is creating competition for the United States. New Brunswick has felt the sharp edge of America's tariffs. Steel, aluminum, and softwood duties have hit local businesses. The provincial government confirmed in its fiscal projections that the deficit increased by 120 million Canadian dollars beyond what was forecast in March 2025. Ottawa has responded by building buffers and laying foundations. Carney has cut federal taxes on income and capital, removed barriers to trade between provinces, and passed a law to fast-track hundreds of billions of dollars in new projects across energy, artificial intelligence, minerals, and trade corridors. Holt is focused on one concrete project. The St. John LNG terminal already exists, with tanks and berths ready to load ships bound for Europe. What is missing is a stretch of about 600 kilometers of pipeline to connect it to Western Canadian gas supplies. She argues that this is not a distant dream.
We don't have time to build a ton of new infrastructure. We have an existing LNG terminal in St. John that is ready to be used in the next few years.
Unlike new mega projects that take decades, this is a short addition to existing infrastructure. The business case has changed. European buyers are signaling interest not only because of the need to cut dependence on Russia, but also because trust in American supplies has been shaken.
They're a lot more wary about Russian sources, and right now they're even wary about American sources of fuel because of the way that relationship's been going.
The comparison with the U.S. Gulf Coast is stark. Gulf terminals are massive and efficient, but their lead times are long. Contracts are tied up years in advance, and voyages to Northwest Europe take longer. By contrast, St. John is only an Atlantic hop away. Europe's own leaders have said they are willing to pay more for stable, democratic sources of supply. Canada fits that bill. There are obstacles. Pipelines must pass through multiple provinces, and that requires environmental reviews, consultations, and financing. Political resistance is possible, and global competition remains fierce. Qatar and U.S. exporters are not stepping aside. Yet the fundamentals are shifting. Canada has already signed a comprehensive economic and security partnership with the European Union in June 2025, reinforcing that energy will be part of a broader strategic relationship. The infrastructure on the East Coast, if completed, would put Canadian gas into that framework. Carney put it plainly.
This is not a transition, this is a rupture. This is a sharp change in a short period of time, driven by a variety of factors.
For the United States, the lesson is uncomfortable. Tariffs were supposed to discipline Canada and bring concessions. Instead, they pushed Canada toward Europe, encouraged provinces like New Brunswick to double down on projects, and gave Ottawa a political mandate to fast-track development. As the U.S., Mexico, and Canada move toward the 2026 review of their trade pact, the White House could face a neighbor armed with new leverage. For Canada, the opportunity is clear. If it can build the pipeline, manage its deficit responsibly, and deliver gas to Europe, it will gain lasting bargaining power and revenues. For Europe, the payoff is diversification in a moment when energy security is fragile. The entire chain of events underscores how pressure can create unintended consequences. Trump's tariffs were meant to contain Canada. Instead, they have sped up its emergence as a competitor, one pipeline away from turning Atlantic Canada into a gateway of energy for Europe.
We know we can't control what other nations do. So we're focused on what we can control, building our strength right here at home.
The Port of Montreal's plans to expand is one of the 5 major projects Prime Minister Mark Carney has targeted to fast-track. At the end of its construction, it will handle more than 1 million containers a year.
President Trump continues to celebrate tariffs as proof of America's strength, presenting them as a tool to force partners into line. But across the border, Canada is taking a quieter approach. Instead of chasing headlines, Ottawa is laying bricks for long-term resilience. It is investing in projects that do not show instant results, but will change the country's position in global trade for decades to come. At the center of this effort stands the Port of Montreal expansion at Contrecoeur. Prime Minister Mark Carney has placed it among the 5 national projects chosen for fast-track approval. For Ottawa, this expansion is not simply about handling more cargo. It is about securing independence in logistics at a time when tariffs and trade disputes make cross-border reliance riskier than ever. The Port of Montreal is already close to its full capacity. According to the Montreal Port Authority, the existing terminals are nearly saturated. Without expansion, container traffic risks hitting a bottleneck that could choke one of Canada's most important gateways. The Contrecoeur project is designed to prevent that. Once complete, it will add capacity for more than 1 million containers per year. The federal government has created a major projects office to coordinate the work and ensure deadlines do not slip. Under Bill C-5, Ottawa can also streamline the regulatory process so that major projects move faster. The benefits are not minor. The federal government estimates the expansion will generate 1,200 construction jobs and bring 140 million Canadian dollars in annual economic value once operational. But challenges remain. Fisheries and Oceans Canada and Environment Canada must still approve measures to protect the copper red horsefish and the western chorus frog. Environmental groups have also launched lawsuits against Bill C-5 in Quebec's Superior Court. Despite these hurdles, officials remain confident. The project will move forward, with fieldwork scheduled for 2027 and completion targeted for 2030. The strategic meaning of this expansion goes far beyond container counts. For years, much of central Canada's trade has flowed through American ports like New York and New Jersey before reaching global markets. This dependency gave the United States leverage, especially when tariffs became a political weapon. With a new terminal at Montreal, Canadian exporters will be able to ship directly to Europe and the Atlantic markets without rerouting through U.S. infrastructure. This shift is crucial in the context of Trump's reciprocal tariffs. Instead of being trapped, Canada is creating alternatives. The expansion aligns with broader investments, such as Electra Battery Materials' cobalt refinery in Ontario and new development in potash mining. Together, these moves build a foundation for supply chains that are less exposed to sudden tariff shocks from Washington. In the long run, projects like this could also encourage global shippers to see Canada as a stable hub, not just a secondary option. By proving it can deliver capacity and reliability, Canada strengthens its bargaining power in future trade negotiations. That credibility matters when neighbors and allies are rethinking their supply routes under constant tariff uncertainty. Trump's strategy is built on short-term pressure. His administration points to tariffs as evidence that America is winning the trade fight. But the Canadian response tells another story. By investing in its own capacity, Canada is preparing for the long game. The Port of Montreal expansion has become a symbol of this approach. It ensures that the nation can handle more trade on its own soil, reducing reliance on U.S. ports and limiting exposure to American tariff politics. In the end, tariffs that were meant to weaken Canada are fueling its determination to stand on firmer ground. When the terminal opens in 2030, it will not just represent steel and concrete. It will represent a strategic shift. The map of North American trade will look different, with Canada more confident as a direct gateway to the world. Trump's tariffs may have caused pain in the short term, but they are also pushing Canada to build independence that could outlast any administration in Washington.
Don't push a Canadian too far. I mean, push too far. Push too far. Push too far by someone who's richer
Someone who's more powerful, maybe a little more arrogant, I don't know. I can't think of an analogy.
At the Toronto International Film Festival this year, the spotlight was not only on cinema, it was also on Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney. In a tribute speech, he recalled how Canadian actor John Candy often played characters who were pushed too far, who eventually stood up for themselves. Carney then added his own twist. He reminded the audience that Canadians, too, will not sit quietly when their sovereignty is challenged. On the surface, it was a celebration of film, but underneath it carried a pointed message. At a cultural festival known for its global reach, Carney sent a signal to Washington. Canada, he implied, will not be intimidated by Donald Trump's pressure. Using the language of film and humor, Carney transformed an art stage into a platform for political resistance. The timing of this remark matters. Only days earlier, the United States had raised tariffs on Canadian goods outside the USMCA framework from 25% to 35%. These measures, announced on August 1st under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, struck industries like softwood lumber, steel, and aluminum. Trump called them reciprocal tariffs. For Canadian producers, they were a direct threat to their livelihoods. In this climate, Carney's line about being pushed too far was not entertainment. It was a response to escalating trade aggression. The Prime Minister had already introduced an $80 million regional tariff response initiative for small and medium-sized businesses in Atlantic Canada, helping them invest in new markets and storage systems to reach Europe and Asia. His government framed this as part of a broader plan to give companies the tools to adapt rather than wait for uncertain outcomes. By placing humor and resilience side by side with practical support, Carney sent a clear message. Canada would not bow to Trump's tariffs, but would act with both defiance and preparation. That same week in Ontario, Carney expanded on this theme. He described the global trading system as experiencing not a transition, but a rupture. According to him, the United States had moved away from decades of free trade and returned to economic nationalism, with tariff rates at their highest since the Great Depression of the 1930s. These are not small adjustments. Supply chains built over generations are now being disrupted. Companies are holding back investment, and workers in multiple sectors are facing new uncertainty. Carney argued that Canada cannot afford to rely on one partner, even if that partner is the United States. His government announced a major projects office to fast-track infrastructure and energy projects, while reinforcing a Buy Canadian strategy to keep domestic demand strong. The purpose was not only to defend against U.S. tariffs, but also to reorient Canada toward a wider network of allies in Europe and Asia. Taken together, these steps underline a national strategy that goes beyond symbolic gestures. Carney's TIF remarks were a cultural prelude to a comprehensive economic plan.
We're in a more dangerous, divided, and intolerant world. In Canada, our sovereignty, our identity has come under threat. And when Canadians heard those threats, they channeled their inner John Candy. Hope is not a strategy. It's time, as I said earlier, to control what we can control. The products we buy in Canada. Taking the time so our businesses can have what they need to adjust to new realities.
This contrast with Donald Trump could not be sharper. In Washington, tariffs have become the hallmark of economic policy. By early August, global rates on over 60 countries ranged from 10% to 50%, with Trump even threatening 100% duties on semiconductors. The White House defended these as necessary to bring jobs home, but independent studies, including those from U.S. universities like Yale, have warned of rising household costs. In Ottawa, the response has been different. Carney's approach ties national pride with economic resilience. His choice of words at TIFF and his policy speeches afterward both reflect the same theme. Canada will defend its sovereignty by diversifying, investing, and standing together. What began as a tribute to an actor became a declaration of strategy. For Canadians, the message was unmistakable. Their Prime Minister used humor to mask steel, turning a festival of stories into a reminder that Canada is ready to write its own.